したいとで読み直しているで読み直しているだけがで読み直しているで読み直してで読み直しているで読み直しているで読み直しているでキスしたいとで読み直しているで読み直しているだけがで読み直しているで読み直しているしたいとで読み直しているで読み直しているだけがで読み直しているで読み直してで読み直しているで読み直しているで読み直しているでキスしたいとで読み直しているで読み直しているだけがで読み直しているしたいとで読み直しているで読み直しているだけがで読み直しているで読み直してで読み直しているで読み直しているで読み直しているでキスしたいとで読み直しているで読み直しているだけがで読み直しているで読み直している
Yup, we're live. It's early. It's 8:15. It's very early. I got a big day ahead of me, and I am not gonna make excuses for not doing the podcast. So I got up early, hit the gym early, and honestly, this is the time I want to start every day anyway. So I might just make this the norm. 8, 8:15, 8:30. I just got shit to do. I can't start cleaning carpets at 10. I gotta get out of here earlier. So it's 8:15. Now it's 8:16, and I understand I'll probably get fewer live participation, but that's on you. That's not on me. If you love this, if you love, sorry, I'm trying to shrink this border, but it's not working. I won't fuck with it. I'm joking. I'm sorry if that throws you off and if you have been watching and you want to watch, but you can't make 8 o'clock work, then I'm sorry. But I got to do it this way. Probably. And maybe not. Maybe I'll go back to 9. H. Langston's out here. 8 o'clock, baby. He's up early. He's up early and stays up late. So he's got no excuses. He's a dad though. So he could do that. He's been trained to get no sleep. But you've always been one that's never got sleep. You never got sleep in high school. I'm sure you didn't sleep on your mission at all. I bet you went 2 years off of fasting and the Lord's help. No sleep. Proud of you. Good morning, guys. I want to start today with this post from David Goggins because it got me fucking pumped up today. Not pumped up. I want to search David Goggins. Sleep is for the weak. I live very hard. You live very hard and you climb mountains for different reasons than I climb mountains. You climb mountains because the state depends on it. It's a very good reason. This morning I got to the gym and I opened up Instagram and the first thing that was on there was David Goggins doing flutter kicks and he's holding 2 dumbbells up above his head. Yeah, you could see it if you're watching the live. I'm showing the video. Just some savagery, but his post is awesome. I'm going to read it. It's kind of long, but I'm going to read it. Negotiating with yourself is the root of all evil. It's a fucking cancer. If you are a person who wakes up every day wondering why you are in the same position you have been in for years, I can almost guarantee you it's because you were in a negotiation phase of your life for too long. Life requires an abundant amount of action. There is no action taken in the negotiation and explaining away phase. Let me explain to you how this works. When it's early and you don't want to get up, you wake the fuck up. When you don't want to go on a run, you put your shoes on and go on a run, regardless if it's hot, cold, windy, snowing, whatever. If you just got home from school and you're having a hard time with a particular subject, you sit your ass down and start studying that very subject again. If you are an athlete and you just can't hit the shot after practice, you pick up the ball, you pick the ball back up again until you get it. These examples are people who don't negotiate with themselves. This shit can be exhausting. Even more than exhausting, it can be frustrating and mind-numbing. The amount of work and effort required can be overwhelming, which is why the majority of us love to negotiate our goals and explain away. Explain away is very simple. If you have kids and they eat shitty food, you will say you eat shitty food because they eat shitty food. If you have a spouse who doesn't work out, you will use your spouse's lazy ass as the explanation for your laziness. Some of you make yourself feel better by telling yourself that people in better life situations than you didn't have the same challenges and problems that got you stuck in the negotiation, explain away phase. Sorry to tell you, most of them did. They just navigated them better than you. Instead of negotiating in life, learn to navigate it. And then I went back and I watched him do more flutter kicks holding fucking kettlebells. The guy's a monster. But I'll tell you what, I was right there this morning. My alarm went off 5:30, and I laid there and I thought I don't have to go to the gym this early. I could just start the pod, because I went to bed planning on getting up early to do the pod later, or to do the pod earlier. And when my alarm clock went off at 5:30, I totally started negotiating with myself. I thought I'll sleep for another hour, get up at 6:30, do my, it's still early, right? It's still early. You could still get to the gym. It'll put a little bit of strain on my day, but I could start at 9. I could blaze through the podcast, and then without seeing the David Goggins post, I decided to get up and go. I snoozed until about 5:45 anyway, but I got up and I got out earlier. I'm so glad I did. I was fucking exhausted, but when I saw this post, I was it was reassuring. It felt good to see and to hear some hard motherfucker doing flutter kicks early in the morning and posting about it. So there's your motivation for the day, whatever day you're listening to this, because we do the podcast live. Now we're doing it live at 8 o'clock in the morning, Mountain Standard Time on Mondays. Usually goes live the next day on Tuesday. Whenever you catch it, I hope that you stop negotiating with yourself and start navigating your life. There's your motivation. So, without any further ado, I went to Einstein Brothers yesterday, got some coffee, and it is not that great. Just the shit that we make out of the Keurig is way better. Last week I read The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. The Art of Thinking Clearly. Rolf Dobelli is a best-selling writer and entrepreneur. He's the founder of Zurich Minds, Zurich.minds, a community of some of the world's most famed and distinguished thinkers, scientists, artists, and entrepreneurs, and a co-founder of Get Abstract, the world's largest publisher of compressed knowledge. He lives in Lucerne, Switzerland. Lucerne? Lucerne. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. The Art of Thinking Clearly shows that in order to lead happier, more prosperous lives, we don't need extra cunning, new ideas, shiny gadgets, or more frantic activity. All we need is less irrationality. Simple, clear, and always surprising, this book will change the way you think and transform your decision-making. From why you should not accept a free drink, to why you should walk out of a movie you don't like, from why it's so hard to predict the future, to why you shouldn't watch the news. The Art of Thinking Clearly helps solve the puzzle of human reasoning. I've had this on my wish list to read for a long time, probably over a year, and never got around to it until recently. And not going to lie, it actually took me longer than a week. I started reading it the week before last, after the Rich Dad Poor Dad, before that podcast. The reason it took so long, it's not a terribly long book. It has 99 chapters, and in the audiobook is 4 minutes a chapter. The reason it took so long was because each chapter is a fallacy, a reasoning fallacy, or a cognitive error. So it took a lot of focus to read the book, read the chapter, listen to the chapter, and then I have been taking notes on every chapter. So I got every chapter summarized in my notes, each cognitive error or fallacy, and its description. 99 of them. So I want to go through how to improve your cognitive thinking, your rationalities. And that's what this book is all about. We're all subject to irrationalities, and we're all subject to cognitive errors. This book explains what they are and how to overcome them. So the point that I'm going to try to go through. I don't want to go through each. I don't want to go through each one, like describe each one. I'm gonna go through all. I'm gonna read all of them, and then talk about the ones that stood out the most to me. And it shouldn't take too long. It took me about 90 seconds to just read. I already went through this. It just took me 90 seconds to go through each fallacy anyway. So this I don't expect this to go too long. Oh, I should also say too before I get started. This Saturday is the concert. And I posted my flyer on Instagram. Time. I didn't put the place down. If you're interested in coming, then reach out my way and I'll send you the address. Because I don't like to post my address publicly. So the details are on my Instagram and not on Facebook. I've not posted on Facebook. But you could reach out to me anywhere and I'll get it sent to you. Okay. The art of thinking clearly. We're all subject to these irrationalities and cognitive errors. Yes. Okay. The first one, survivorship bias. And if you're listening live, I'm sure it might just be H. Langston. So if you're listening live and I go over, I mention of an irrationality or a cognitive error that you want to hear more about that I don't touch on, then just say it in the chat and I'll go back and I'll read the definitions and stuff. So yeah, so like I said, these are mindsets and attitudes and decisions that humans make, sometimes subconsciously, or just from how humans have evolved. He also says not all of these are terrible for you. The point is, and it's also not a finite list. I think all of the irrationalities come from studies and whatever kind of research that explains why humans behave the way they do. And anyway, it's not like he's just came up with this list. All of the points are backed by experiments or studies. So the first one, survivorship bias. People systematically overestimate their chances of success. Number 2, swimmer bodies illusion. Number 3, clustering illusion. Number 4, social proof, herd instinct. The more people display a behavior, the more appropriate this behavior is judged by others. Number 5, sunk cost fallacy. I am subject to sunk cost fallacy almost every day. Sunk cost fallacy is the more we invest in something, the harder withdrawing from it becomes. The example that he used was going to a movie, buying tickets to a movie, going to the movie, and then not enjoying yourself during the movie, but refusing to leave because you bought tickets for the movie. I do this. I do it every fucking week when I sit down to do this podcast and I'm drinking that nasty ass protein shake that I don't even like, but I drink it because I bought the powder. I have the powder. I got to finish it. The point is, for sunk cost fallacy, we feel like we have to endure something because of what we've invested in it, but it's a fallacy because there's no moral obligation to do that. If we don't like the protein powder, we could just discard it, sell it, to throw it away, whatever. If you don't like a movie, you should just walk out of the movie. Choosing to stay because of what you've invested in it. Or maybe just like businesses or things that you invest in. If you invest money into a stock or into a business and then the business is failing or the stock is failing, but there's another one that kind of is similar to that. It's a fallacy that we have. That's number 5. Number 6, reciprocity. The good part of reciprocity is it breeds trust with each other. It's the core of cooperation. But the bad side of reciprocity is retaliation, obligation to do things you wouldn't otherwise do. I think that's the example that from the description of the book. Why we shouldn't accept free drinks, because then we feel obligated to buy free drinks for other people when we wouldn't have done so otherwise, or do favors for people that we wouldn't have done otherwise. It's like a moral obligation that cognitively doesn't make sense. It's a nice thing to do, but you get what I'm saying? It's a fallacy. Do you know what fallacy means? Let me tell you what fallacy means through the Apple dictionary. Misconception, a mistaken belief, especially one based on unsound argument. It's a misconception. We feel like we have a moral obligation to pay people back, but that's a misconception. There's no moral obligation. Or there's no obligation. Maybe morally we feel obligated, but there is no actual obligation. It's a misconception. Am I making sense? Does a fucking point of the book make sense? That's reciprocity. 7, the king of all fallacies is confirmation bias. 2 parts of confirmation bias: filtering out info that does not support our beliefs. And the second part is world influencers experience their own World influencers experience their own bias and project that as proof. Hey, 7X West Side 15. I don't want to become famous, and I don't want to buy followers, primes, or viewers on bigfollows.com. So you could fuck off, mate. All right, let's move on. Let's roast him in the chat, please. Fucking bots, man. Okay, that's confirmation bias. Number 9, authority bias, unwavering trust in professionals. I think a lot of the point of the book is, so we're all humans are infallible anyway. So the fact that we can be professionals in something and deem ourselves as almost imperfect, or that our knowledge is impeccable, is a fallacy. Authority bias, unwavering trust in those professionals. Contrast effect. Number 10, contrast effect. We judge something to be beautiful if we have something ugly in front of us. Number 11, availability bias. Painting a picture of the world using examples that come to mind the easiest. Number 12, it'll get worse before it gets better. It's a variant of confirmation bias and sunk cost fallacy. It'll get worse before it gets better. It's a fallacy. He gives an example about himself being in a third world country, getting sick with something, and going to a doctor, and the doctor doesn't know what's going on with him, but pretends that he does. He tells him to take an antibiotic, and the doctor says, well, it'll get worse before it gets better. And the guy believes him because he was a doctor, but then he just gets sicker and sicker. It's not getting better, and then he's like, doctor, I'm just getting sicker. And the doctor's like, yes, exactly. It'll get worse before it gets better. But it never got better. It turned out to be appendicitis. He got flown back to the States or wherever, to Switzerland, wherever he went, and got his appendix out. So it was a combination of those. It'll get worse before it gets better fallacy. Number 13, story bias. Number 14, hindsight bias, the I told you so mentality. Number 15, overconfidence effect, believing we're smarter or better performers than we actually are. Number 16, chauffeur knowledge. Number 17, illusion control, believing we can influence something over which we have no sway. Number 18, intentive super response tendency. People respond to incentives by doing what is in their best interest. He kind of related it to business models. Poor incentives overlook underlying aims. Effective incentives comprise intent and reward. Yeah, that's inventive super response. Maybe I meant to say incentive super response tendency for number 18. Yeah, we're doing this live. You think that I have everything fucking planned out? Yeah, it's incentive super response tendency. Yep. Poor incentives overlook underlying aims, and effective incentives comprise intent and reward. Number 19, regression to mean. Excuse me, geez, regression to mean error. Number 20, outcome bias, assessing the result and not the process. 21, paradox of choice. I understand this might be very boring. So, whatever. I don't fucking care. This was a great book. And I loved all of these fallacies. It's kind of boring just reading back the fallacies, though. I get it. But like I said, I don't fucking care. 22, liking bias. 23, endowment effect. Number 24, coincidence. Improbable coincidences are rare but possible. This guy is like he's super statistical. Most of these is kind of has a basis in statistics. The fact that something can happen but doesn't happen very often doesn't mean that when it happens it was divine or it was supposed to happen. Things could be coincidence. And he gives an example about a friend from high school calling you and what are the chances of that happening, and then he's like, well, here are the actual chances, and blah blah blah. So it's a big emphasis on facts and just removing our irrationality of thinking that there is no coincidence and things happen for a reason. If you know me at all, you know that you probably know that I think everything happens for a reason is just another misconception. And not that I think that it's bad to think that way. In fact, I think actually believing that things happen for a reason or that there's a plan to everything that actually happens is a super optimistic look at life. But it also comes with its own issues. I've decided to withdraw from that belief because I think it's irrational. I think there's either an explanation or possibility for anything that has happened to happen. And whether it happens or not is just merely coincidence. In fact, everything that happens is just coincidence regardless of how rare the occurrence is. Yeah, anyway, that's 24. 25, groupthink. Yep, thinking with a group instead of by yourself. 26, neglect of probability. Humans lack an inherent grasp of probability. And then he gives the same example from that I gave about the penny. Would you rather take a penny that compounds that doubles for 31 days, or take the $1 million or whatever it was? Gives that same example. Humans lack an inherent grasp of probability. 27, scarcity error. 28, base rate neglect. Disregard of fundamental distribution levels. Analyze statistics about an event and then disregard beliefs. 29, gambler's fallacy. Yeah, believing in the harmonizing forces of the universe. This kind of same thing it kind of falls in line with coincidence and just with random chance and probability. He tells a story about some casino that was the roulette table was rolling. I don't remember the exact details, but the casino was rolling on black, and so people came by and they were betting red. It's got to land on red this time. They kept rolling black several times. More people were showing up, throwing tons of money on the table. It's going to roll red. It's going to roll red. Just kept rolling black. And the fallacy is that humans have this inherent belief that of a balancing force. It's the gambler's fallacy, the harmony forces of the universe. It's the chances of the ball rolling black 35 times is highly improbable, but it's not impossible. It's just coincidence. That's just unless it was truly rigged, but I don't fucking think it was. I don't know, whatever. But that's the fallacy. Thinking that there's a harmonizing force of the universe that balances all the events that happen when it could just, the probability of it rolling black 35 times in a row is very low, but possible. A lot of people lost a lot of money. Number 30, the anchor effect. 31, induction, drawing universal certainties from individual observations. 32, loss aversion. We fear loss more than we appreciate gains. We are descendants of risk and loss averse humans. Yeah, he gives, he gives a lot of examples of our primal ancestors and how we are descendants of humans that behaved a certain way. And just like 32, loss aversion, we're descendants of risk and loss averse humans. Because if our primal ancestors decided to take risks about like jumping over a cliff or trying to jump a gap, and then, but if you miss, you fall to your death, or if you risk hunting mammoths by yourself instead of with a group, whatever the fucking example, those humans died more often than not. And we are the descendants of those humans that most likely averted the risk. So we are inherently risk avoiders. Oh, I got screwed up. Loss aversion, 32. Yep, we fear loss more than we appreciate gains. It's in our DNA. 33, social loafing. Individual effort is not recognizable, blended in the group. 34, exponential growth. Humans have no intuition on exponential growth, only linear growth. That's probably where he gives the penny example. That's probably the chapter. 35, winner's curse. You are likely to lose money winning an auction or a bid, as you usually spend more than what it's worth. The winner's curse. We want to win so bad that we end up spending more money on something that is worth less because we want to win. 36, fundamental attribution error. Underestimating external situational factors, overestimating individual influence. 37, false causality. False causality. B-Moon, you're not late. I started early and I didn't say anything until like 7:45, so it's not your fault. I'm sorry I'm early. I apologize. Good thing it's recorded and you can go back and listen to it if you want. But you're here for now. Go back to the beginning and figure out what we're doing and catch up if you want. I'm just going to keep going. I'm reading from The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. DaBaby. False causality is 37. Correlation is not causality. That is probably the greatest principle in statistics. Correlation is not causality. Correlation is not causality. What other subject is that huge in? I just remember taking statistics in college, and that was the point of the whole class. 38, halo effect. 39, alternative paths. Risk is not directly visible. Consider what alternative paths are. 40, forecast illusion. Even experts are slightly better at predicting large variable outcomes to randomly processed outcomes. We suck at predicting the future, is the point. Always be wary of experts' predictions and experts' forecasts, because no matter, like I said earlier, no matter how professional we are or how much of an expert we are, we inherently have no ability to predict the future. Nobody does. So be wary of all predictions of the future. 41, conjunction fallacy. Drawing conclusions too early. 42, framing. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. 43, action bias. 44, omission bias. We prefer making inactive mistakes to active mistakes. 45, self-serving bias. We attribute success to ourselves and failures to others. We don't accept failures. Self-serving bias. 46, hedonic treadmill. Overestimating how happy we will be gaining material possessions and promotions. 47, self-selection bias. 48, association bias. 49, beginner's luck is a cognitive error. 50, cognitive excuse me. 50, cognitive dissonance, convicting yourself of unwanted circumstances. Nope, it is convincing. Convincing yourself unwanted circumstances are actually desirable. 51, hyperbolic discounting. 52, because justification. When you justify your behavior, you encounter more tolerance. 53, decision fatigue. 54, contagion bias, incapable to ignore connections to certain items. Let's see. 55, the problem with averages. 56, motivation crowding. 57, twaddle tendency. Tomes of useless chatter. Jabber disguises ignorance. Twaddle tendency. 58, Will Rogers phenomenon. Shifting numbers across branches of a company to raise an average. Yep. There's a problem with averages. Yep. That was a huge point too. There's a huge problem with averages. You have to be very clear on outliers. Yeah, he gives an example of here's a story about averages. Let's say you're on a bus with 50 people. What's the likely, if there's just, 50 random Americans, what's the average household income of that bus? Probably 70,000, 80,000, 100,000, whatever. But let's say that Bill Gates walks onto the bus. What is the average household income of that bus now? Now the average is 2 billion or something, 500 million. So if you're going to look at averages, you have to understand all of the information presented so that you are not led astray by averages. And the sucky thing about all of this is some people and corporations are probably aware of these fallacies, but they use them to their advantage to deceive us. So they use averages to say things like, oh, yeah, he gives plenty of examples. That's why it's very important to read the book if you're interested in any of this. My rhetoric is not near as eloquent as his. If you could take the average of, if you use statistics and skew them so that they're not wrong but that they're skewed, and project whatever kind of propaganda that you want that fits your agenda, and people that don't take the time to learn details are going to get burned by these kind of people. So you got to stay on top. That was 58. 59, information bias. Delusion that more information guarantees better decisions. Sometimes less information is better. Effort justification. 61, the law of small numbers. 62, expectations. Expectations is a fallacy. It's important to raise expectations for ourselves, but lower expectations for things that are out of our control. Like a movie. Lower your expectations for a movie because you can't set high expectations and change the outcome of the movie. It's good to go into movies with low expectations. And most people that say, you know what, I thought that movie was going to suck, but then I had a really good time and I really enjoyed the movie. Had a low expectation. And then most of the time people with high expectations have a not as good of an experience. Okay, 63, simple logic. This one was probably my favorite chapter. And I'm going to read, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to read part of the chapter to you. It gives 63 talks about examples from the cognitive reflection test. And the cognitive reflection test is, in essence, how well we use our brains. Ooh, I loved this chapter. So if you're listening, listen to these questions and try to figure them out. In a department store, a ping pong paddle and a plastic ball cost $1.10. If the paddle costs $1 more, how much is the ball? Second question. In a textile factory, 5 machines take exactly 5 minutes to make 5 shirts. I'll say that again. In a textile factory, 5 machines take 5 minutes to make 5 shirts. How many minutes will it take 100 machines to make 100 shirts? How long will it take? And the third question. A pond has water lilies growing in it. The flowers multiply quickly, each day doubling the area they take up. If it takes 48 days for the pond to be completely covered with water lilies, how many days will it take for it to be half covered? And I could give you the answers, but I want you to figure it out. And maybe I'll come back to the answers at the end. Take some time to think about it. The point of that chapter is we tend to jump to conclusions, assuming that we know the answers right away. And these questions are kind of designed to trick you to coming up with an initial response or an initial answer, and then whether or not we think through that answer is our response to the cognitive reflection, to our cognitive reflection. So come up with your answers, and I'll come back to this one in a little bit. I'm going to move on. 64, Forer effect. Labeling our traits generally or universally. 65, volunteer's folly. This one was interesting to me. It feels good to volunteer even when it comes at a cost or when it doesn't make sense. Helping without expertise and losing money versus paying out the task to a pro and not losing money. The example that he gives is there's a kid that is a photographer, makes a lot of money in photography, and one day wants to start to give back and do more meaningful work. So he finds an opportunity to make birdhouses. And anyway, the cost of him stopping doing the photography to make birdhouses when he has no experience making birdhouses comes at a higher cost than continuing to be a photographer, pay out a carpenter to make the birdhouses, and where that situation is a win-win. We feel like it feels good to do something that we deem as important, but we don't recognize the costs that sometimes that comes with. If the photographer makes birdhouses, he's going to make shittier birdhouses, and he's not going to be making money as a photographer. But if he pays out a carpenter, he could continue to work, continue to make money, and then get better birdhouses from the carpenter. That's the volunteer's folly. So it feels good to do good, but there is a cost to it. And the folly is not thinking about the cost. 66, affect heuristic. A heuristic is a mental shortcut. So affect heuristics is a momentary judgment, which are very important. It's important. This is it's important for us to make quick decisions, but we got to be good at making quick decisions. 67, introspection illusion. Belief that reflection leads to truth or accuracy. 68, inability to close doors. 69, neomania. Mania for all things shiny and new. Just like getting the new iPhone every fucking year when your iPhone works just fine. I always used to laugh at my buddies that that are 5 years behind on the new iPhone. You just, what are you doing with the old iPhone? You still got a fucking button at the bottom of your phone. But I mean, what is the actual point of getting a new iPhone? It's just a new gear. It's just new and shiny. If your phone works, then there's no reason to keep upgrading. It's a fallacy. Neomania. 70s, sleeper effect. Source of the argument fades faster than the argument does. The source of the argument fades faster than the argument. So if you hear if you are reading false news from some page that is totally uncredible, incredible is way different than uncredible. If you're reading information from a page that is not producing good information, you'll forget about the page before you'll forget the information. That's the sleeper effect. 71, alternative blindness, systematically forgetting to compare existing offers with next best alternatives. It's similar to the alternative one. Sorry, going back to the riddle. Okay, B-Moon, keep posting your answers. If you post all three, then I'll go back to it. That's awesome. Don't apologize. Don't ever apologize. 72, social. I just want to get through all of the points. 72, social comparison bias. Comparison bias. The tendency to withhold assistance to people who might outdo you. 73, primacy and recency effects. Paying attention to the first few adjectives in a list. 74, not invented here syndrome. Falling in love with our ideas even if they're terrible. A lot of these are related, so they might sound familiar. 75, the black swan, a massive event that affects your life, career, company, country. 76, domain dependence. 77, false consensus effect. 78, falsification of history. 79, in-group, out-group bias. 80, ambiguity aversion, favoring known probabilities over unknown. 81, default effect. 82, fear of regret. Whoever does not follow the crowd feels more regret. Interesting. That's probably why it's so hard to do things that are contrary to what the majority of people are doing. The fear of regret, 82. 83, salience effect. Hold on. Fear of regret. That's why people don't do hard shit, probably. I just keep thinking about going to bed on time, missing out on playing games with my friends, not going to activities because I need to rest or I need to sleep. And I know that H. Langston thinks sleep is for the weak, but my body is so tired all of the time. So when am I willing to sacrifice my sleep for fun? It's like FOMO. It's FOMO. Fear of regret is FOMO. Fear of missing out. Anyway, 83, salience effect. Outstanding features receive more attention than they deserve. 84, house money effect, same as the gambling. We treat money that we win or inherit more valuable than money that was hard earned. 85, procrastination. 86, envy. It's the most sincere type of flattery, but besides that, it's a complete waste of time. 87, personification. 88, illusion of attention. 89, strategic misrepresentation. 90, overthinking. 91, planning fallacy. We are not natural-born planners. We overestimate what we can do in a day. 92, deformation. Oh, this is like a French phrase. Deformation professionnelle. If your only tool is a hammer, all your problems will be nails, says Mark Twain. If your only tool is a hammer, all your problems will be nails. And some examples he gives is if you're a preacher, then you're going to handle everything with the Spirit. And if you're an atheist, you're going to do the opposite. Everything's, if you're a carpenter Or let's see, if you're an engineer, you're gonna problem solve all your way out of everything. If your only tool is a hammer, all your problems will be nails. 93, Zeigarnik effect. We seldom forget uncompleted tasks until they are completed. 94, illusion of skill. 95, feature positive effect. 96, cherry picking, showcasing the most attractive features and hiding the rest. 97, fallacy of the single cause, believing there is one factor that causes an event. 98, intention to treat error. Samples of failed projects show up but are outliers. Yeah, this one's similar to the first one. The first one being survivorship bias, where we systematically overestimate our chances of success. And then this one is when those things happen, when there are outliers of success, but they are not part of the main sample. And the last one, 99, news illusion. News is processed information, is very bad for us. He says if we should do anything from this book, we should stop listening to the news, because all of the information from it is bullshit anyway, and it's actually there is a part from that chapter that I want to see if I can find and share, because I've cut out news, and I unfollowed all of those people on social media. I do listen to KSL News Radio 102.7 FM 1160 AM. I listen to it pretty much every day. So I haven't cut out news, but I mix up my sources of media. Yeah, he gives 3 points. I won't read all the points, but he gives 3 big reasons why we should give up news. The first, our brains react disproportionately to different types of information. Scandalous, shocking, people-based, loud, fast-changing details are stimulant to us, whereas abstract, complex, and unprocessed information sedates us. So news is the scandalous, shocking, people-based, loud, and fast-changing details. As a result, we walk around with a distorted mental map of the risks and threats we actually face. Yeah, it's huge. This is huge. Cut out news. Second, news is news is irrelevant. In the past 12 months, very honest. Yeah. People don't remember the news that they consume. He shares an experiment where he says, from the last 30 days, name one piece of news that has helped you throughout your day, and the majority of people can't even think of one. The third, news is a waste of time. An average human being squanders half a day each week on reading about current affairs. Yep, 1 billion people multiplied by an hour's distraction equals 1 billion hours of work stoppage. If we converted this, we learned that news consumption wasted around 2,000 lives. A sarcastic but accurate observation. I would predict that turning your back on news will benefit you as much as purging any of the other 98 flaws we have covered in the pages of this book. Kick the habit completely. Instead, read long background articles and books. Yes, nothing beats books for understanding the world. H. Langston says, I don't like the news, but sometimes there's stuff that I feel like I need to hear. Like what? What kind of stuff do you feel like you need to hear? He says in the chapter he cut out his news consumption, and instead of consuming 99% garbage and 1% useful information, he consumes information. He's reading books and long form articles, and then gets the big points the big important things from his friends that are consumed in the news. Like I listened to the H. Langston says, I listened to the daily episode about the code red state of the world for global warming. I feel like that's important to know. It's true. It is important to know about the code red state of the world for global warming. I don't have an answer for you. All I know is so if you want to let me think about it, cuz if he talks about that experiment, let me go back to it. Of it being a waste of time, or that, what was the second point? It's irrelevant. Let's see. In the past 12 months, you probably consumed about 10,000 news snippets, maybe 30 a day, and be honest. Name one of them, just one that helped you make a better decision for your life, your career, or your business. Compared with not having this piece of news. No one I have asked has been able to name more than 2 useful stories out of 10,000, a miserable result. Yeah, hey, Beeman, I think you're right. I think podcasts are a little different. It's like he's suggested, instead of reading newspapers, magazines, watching the news, read long background articles and books. I'd probably say podcasts that are. But how much of the daily, if you listen to the daily every day, how much of it is important? I feel like CNN and Fox News are obviously stayaways. Yeah, mainstream news. Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's one reason why I like podcasts like Rogan, and I don't listen to much Dax Shepard, but it's a great example of long-form conversations instead of shoveling useless information in your face. The daily is one of my go-tos for sure. Is the daily do you feel like the daily is an unbiased source of important news, and does it shovel unimportant things in your face, or is it usually good critical information? I don't know. I don't listen to the daily. Listening to one about the Taliban-Afghanistan conflict today. So, but I guess the question is, does listening to that does it help you make better decisions in your life? I guess I wouldn't argue that it's not good. It's not good to be ignorant, but how does knowing about the Taliban-Afghanistan conflict improve you as a person and what you're doing? I'm a news savvy person. Working in PR makes that so. I feel like I know what news is fluff and what isn't. Okay, but I'll ask you again. How does it positively impact your life? How does it improve you as a person, or you in your relationships? I think that's the argument. Where did I read it? I would predict that turning your back on news will benefit you as much as purging any of the other 98 flaws we have covered in the pages of this book. Or, I would just read the whole fucking chapter, but I'm not going to do that. Our brains react disproportionately to. Where did I read that? Yeah, what piece of news has helped you make better decisions for your life, your career, or your business, compared with not having this piece of news? Yeah, so if you didn't know I don't know shit about the Taliban-Afghanistan conflict, and I'm not saying that that's not an important event, but how does knowing about that help me with where I'm at in my life? H. Langston, that's the catch. Because mostly the news scares me to death, but I don't feel like I can turn a blind eye to world issues. I don't know. Very tough. Okay, well, that's a noble attitude to have, but again, I don't think that knowing about the Taliban-Afghanistan conflict is improving your day-to-day life. I'm not saying be ignorant. I'm obviously ignorant to the conflict. But if I know about it and I study it, unless I am actively engaged in the conflict, it would be important to know. If just like in the Civil War days, it would be important to know about the conflict between the North and the South because I'm involved in it. But if I'm not involved in the Taliban-Afghanistan conflict, so how does knowing about that aspect of world affair improve my daily choices, my career, my relationships? But then to your point, H. Langston, about global warming, we are all involved in global warming. So that would be an important piece of information, I think, to stay in tune with. I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good about that argument. I want to know why you think it's important to know about world affairs like the Taliban-Afghanistan conflict if we're not involved. If you're a patriot and you're concerned about the U.S. presence in the Middle East, then I think knowing about why we're engaged in a war overseas is important. But still, what is knowing about it? How does knowing about it positively impact your life or your daily decisions? I'm gonna move on, but I'll probably text you guys later and see what you think. Because I'm going to move on. I've been here for an hour, way longer than I thought would be. I'm going to go back to those questions about the cognitive. What is it? Cognitive reflection test. Hey, Boo Moon. I think there's an individualistic approach to news and a groupthink approach to news. Yeah, I'll text you about it. Okay, I'm going to go back to these questions, and I'll read them one more time. If you want to try to solve them, then pause this and go through them, and then I'll read the answers. First question. In a department store, a ping pong paddle and a plastic ball cost $1.10. If the paddle costs $1 more, how much is the ball? That's the first one. Second question. In a textile factory, 5 machines take exactly 5 minutes to make 5 shirts. How many minutes will it take 100 machines to produce 100 shirts? The third question. A pond has water lilies growing in it. The flowers multiply quickly, and each day doubling the area they take up. If it takes 48 days for the pond to be completely covered with water lilies, how many days will it take to be half covered? The answers. Brax says 5 minutes for the second one, I think. The answers. The first one, Braxton, you were right. The ball, 5 cents. If the ball is 5 cents and the paddle is $1 more, then the paddle would be $1.05. I guess that one wrong. I guess 10 cents. Then that's the initial answer. I think people normally will guess. But if the ball is 10 cents and the paddle is $1 more, then the paddle would be $1.10, which would mean that both of them together would be $1.20. So, very nice. The second one about the textile factory, the answer is 5 shirts. 5 minutes, yes. Very nice. The initial answer is most people would be 100 minutes for 100 machines to make 100 shirts. So, but mathematically, yes, 5 minutes for 100 machines to make 100 shirts. And then the third question. The initial answer people give would be if it takes 48 for full days for a full pond, then half of the pond, it would be 47 days. But the answer that people will give is 24 days or 24 days. Because if it doubles in size each day, then if you go back one day from a full pond, it would be half full. So it would be 47 days, not 24. So the point of this chapter is, and what I loved so much is how important it is to use our brains to make decisions or to come up with answers. And there is not always a simple answer to all of the questions that we face. And some of the studies that he used for this chapter include what kind of decisions people will make based on their CRT score, and the higher CRT score that people have, the more skeptical they are of beliefs and religions. Let me. I don't want to misspeak. Americans with a high CRT score are often atheists, and their convictions have been reinforced over the years. Participants with low CRT scores tend to believe in God and the immortality of the soul. I'm going to read that again. Participants with low CRT scores tend to believe in God and the immortality of the soul, and often have had divine experiences. This makes sense. The more intuitively people make decisions, the less rationality they query religious beliefs. Query, Query. The more intuitively people make decisions, the less rationally they query religious beliefs. And then he gives another question. I love this book. I love the fallacies. So the epilogue, or the final thoughts were, how do you remove all of these fallacies or these cognitive errors? You can't. The point is to at least be aware of them. And when you make when those errors and those fallacies are present, it's good to recognize them and to make decisions that best influence your life. I'm going to go back to the news for 2 seconds, because that one got the most. Well, there was just a lot of good interaction and some really good points. The point is, how do all of the decisions that you make, all of the information that you process, how does it benefit you? We're not obligated to know anything about world affairs. We're not obligated to trust experts. Everything that we do and think and say and believe should be in our best interest. That's the point. That's the art of thinking clearly. Everything that we do should be working in our best interest. And if we're going to consume copious amounts of news, it better be good news. At least pieces of information that benefit our life, or that help us make better decisions, that make us more successful or happier or healthier or whatever. I think that's the point. Not necessarily having a moral. There's no obligation to be aware of everything, of all world affairs. If it's important to know about the Afghanistan Taliban conflict, then you could also argue that how important it is to know about some other conflict happening in West Africa or in Australia or the Netherlands. But the point is, how does that impact our decision making, or does knowing about it help us make better decisions? I think that's the point. I'm going to stand by it. And his encouragement is to get rid of all of that loose garbage, over-processed news, and focus on the pieces of information that help us make better decisions, help us lead happier lives, have better relationships, and that's the art of thinking clearly. That's what I got from it. I enjoyed it. And now I don't know what I'm going to read. I have a few books. I have a few books on my queue that I want to read next, but I have not decided or purchased anything yet. So next week will be a surprise, but hopefully it will be a good one. And thanks for showing up. You too. H. Langston, Hey B. Moon. I'm sorry that I started early and you had no idea, and that's my fault. But plan on earlier next week as well. If you come in here with that bullshit again, H. Langston, you should read Harry Potter next. I'm going to just simply kick you from the chat. It'll be very simple. I will ban you from the chat with those suggestions. But if you actually have a suggestion, then send it to me, because I have material, but if you have things that have been really beneficial for you for self-improvement, I'll be glad to read it and share my thoughts just like this. But I will not read Harry Potter. I will not read Harry Potter. That's a good subject. That's a good subject. H. Langston. Thanks for showing up, guys. Remember, go do something hard. And just like David Goggins was saying, learn to navigate your life. Don't negotiate your way through life. Don't negotiate your goals. Set your goals and learn to navigate them. Accomplish them. Don't make excuses. Get the fuck after it. If those things are important to you, then make no excuses. Thanks for showing up, guys. 9 o'clock is too late now. We're going to be here at probably 8 a.m. next week. This weekend is the concert, so if you listen to this and you want to come to the concert, reach out to me. I will be so glad to get you out there to check us out. We got 4 groups playing. Should be a really good time. Will be a really good time. Come check it out. Until then, get the fuck after it and have a great day.
して